So the alternative communication system that I will be discussing today is sign language, specifically American Sign Language. So sign language is good for a learner who is able to imitate your motor movements. So what I have seen in my experience is sign language being taught to typically and non-typically developing children, specifically in preschool settings like early learning centers or daycares. And usually the gestures or the signs are paired with some type of speech. So for instance, if I wanted to sign all done, I would also verbally say all done. So I'd say all done. And what I do personally is I use this for my early intervention MAN trainings, and I found that it also helps sometimes with non-compliance issues. So for instance, I work with a 2-year-old boy who's diagnosed with ASD. And right now we're doing MAN training and compliance training with him. So we teach him certain words, certain signs that he can use in order to communicate effectively and get what he wants from his environment and from the people around him. So some of the signs we use is play, all done, eat, drink. We also use help. And so what we found and what our text says and the articles that I did my research on when I wrote my paper is that these alternative methods of communication can be used to decrease aversive behavior. With the child, with the little boy I was talking about, we found that there was a decrease in a lot of his aversive behaviors, such as tantrums, screaming, grabbing, and snatching. So by giving him a way to communicate and interact with his environment in a functional way, he is able to get the things that he wants without having to drop to the floor, tantrum, scream, do all of those things. He can use his words, he can use the signs and get what he needs. So when we're teaching him these signs, we always pair the signs with our words. So for instance, if he was all done with his lunch and I needed him to say all done, I would verbally prompt him to say all done, but I would also use the signs. So I would say all done and wait for his response. I may repeat it again, all done. And then that third time is when I would physically take his hands to do the sign. And while I'm moving his hands to say all done, I am also saying all done. So it's very imperative that you pair those signs with the word. Yes, so those are just a little things that I use. Some drawbacks with this communication system is that not everyone is taught sign language as a communication method. So although the people in his immediate environment, his teachers, his mom, his dad, his grandma, are able to use those signs with him and communicate effectively with him, if he were to encounter a stranger in his environment, they may not be able to understand what he's asking for. They may not know what his signs mean. And they may not also be able to respond to him in the same way. So that is one drawback, but I always like to think that gestures are universal. So like pointing at objects or, like nodding, I feel like those things are pretty universal. But again, it would not be a super functional communication that would be going on between this little boy and a stranger. So this would definitely benefit learners who are able to imitate your motor movements. This would not be well suited for a learner who cannot do that. And of course, each learner has different styles for learning things. Some might be more visual, some might like manipulating tools and inanimate objects. So it all depends on who you're teaching. But thank you for listening and watching me demonstrate some of my ASL.